Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at my best solo cash cup performance yet. I've been grinding solo so hard recently, working on fixing all my mistakes and VOD reviewing every cup, and I got so close to placing last weekend. So today I'm going to be telling you how I almost made money and how I could have. I'm going to be talking about my mindset, playstyle, everything to do with solo cash cups today. So let's hop into it. Before we get into this, I just want to let you know that the full gameplay is on my second YouTube channel in case you want to see the whole thing, all the fights, all the rotations. First thing I want to talk about is my drop spot. I've been landing Weather Station, which may seem like a low-key place to a lot of people, but during a solo cash cup, it is not a low-key spot. Usually I'm contested by like 3 or 4 people, and on top of that, Caddy Corner has another 3 or 4 people. So this side of the map is just as contested as some of the most popular POIs. The reason is there's so much metal, there's peppers, and there's an upgrade person right there. The reason I land over here is just because I have so much experience with Weather Station that I know I can win it basically every single time that I get good guns. The only times I died off spawn in this tournament was when I literally had nothing. There was one game where I died when I had a pistol and a sniper, and then I died 2 other games when I had like no guns. So my advice to you is land somewhere that you have a lot of experience with. It can certainly be a POI. If you're really comfortable at a certain spot on the map, you should go there for the solo tournaments, because the most important thing is you survive off spawn very consistently. I take my off spawn fights super slow and do my best to get angles and just survive at all costs. If I need to, I'll dip out of the fight. I'll try to just disengage, because the most important thing in these tournaments is survival. So if you have really bad loot, the other people have good loot, and you think your chances of survival are really low, it might be worth disengaging. So what do I do after I win my drop spot? I finish harvesting everything that I need to get from that drop spot. So at Weather Station, I'll farm up all the metal, and then I'll dip out. During this tournament, there were a couple times where I got a gold lever off spawn, and once I got that gold lever, I was thinking, maybe it'll be worth it to take some mid-game fights. Well, boy, was I mistaken. Every single time I took a mid-game fight, it lasted for so long, and I would leave that fight really scuffed. The only game where it was actually worth it to take some mid-game fights was the first game. Every single player that places in these cash cups, they'll have a pop-off game. Whether it be their first game, second game, or third, they just W key until they get that big pop-off to send them up the leaderboard. And then once they're higher up on the leaderboard, they play consistently for late game. Almost all of them try to avoid mid-game fights at all costs. And for me personally, even in my first game, I didn't take that many fights. I didn't hard W key. And the reason is, I wasn't feeling confident in my first game. I wanted to get that dub and secure those safe points, and because of that, I didn't take too many mid-game fights, which I should have. I should have known that I have the ability to fight really well in mid-game, and I should have taken more fights. Because in my first game, I didn't even have the loot to win. I didn't have bouncers, peppers, any movement. But I did have good fighting loot, so basically W King was my best bet in that first game to get points. So anyways, moral of the story is, if you want your best chance for making money in a solo cash cup, you should take mid-game fights in your first game. Try to get ahead of the leaderboard early on, and then play consistently from there. So let's talk about the rest of the tournament now. What did I do after my first game? My biggest points of focus were early game and end game. I sweat my butt off trying to win every single early game fight, and I won almost every single one. The games that I threw were the ones where I pushed down to caddy or nearby outskirt spots and tried to pick a fight. Once I won my off-spawn fight, I should have just accepted what I got there and started rotating and trying to get positioning to set myself up for late game. If I could have had those games back where I took mid-game fights, I would have placed in this tournament. So anyways, all my good games were the ones where I won my off-spawn fight, farmed up the metal that was at Weather Station, and then got to zone and started preparing for endgame. I would try to get all of my mats full, fish some 0-point fish, or if it's a sand zone, try to base up on top of some 0-point crystals. I just tried to prepare myself with whatever movement I could gather and as many mats as I could get. And then from there, I just played as safe as possible and tried to position myself to win. I ended up winning one game and getting second place in another, and those 2 games were huge for me. So let's take a look at those 2 games and talk about my rotations and how I position myself for the win and for the second place. As you can see, I have a pepper here and I have a lot of mats, so I'm really set up for an easy rotate. So before I start rotating, because I have this pepper and can catch up easily, I just look for some picks. I'm able to get a free kill, and then I start my rotate. It's really easy to go from the back side of a moving zone to the front side when you're peppered out and have bouncers like this. When it comes to champ cash cups like this, where you get 20 points for a win, like that's a lot. So it's really important that you rotate and rotate early. The people with the best positioning are the ones that are going to win the game and win the tournaments. Once I finally get into zone here, I just look back at some people on high ground, see if I can grief them a bit. Didn't get much of an opportunity, but it was worth a shot. When you get into safe zones, you want to look for picks, make sure all your guns are reloaded, and check your mats and see what kind of bouncers and other movement you have. When you get ahead, you have a little break, so it's important that you make use of those breaks. Anyways, this next rotate, as you can see, I try to get some elevation. I get on a pretty good layer here, and then I just stay towards the front edge of zone and look for some refreshes. It starts raining mats above me, so I get a free refresh, and then I know I have everything I need to win this game. I'm basically in the safe zone, so what do you do when you get in this situation? You start looking around, try to figure out where everybody is, and if you see something that looks like a free kill, you go for it. So after that, I saw an opportunity to get back into my old builds, which was really clutch. The downside to this situation is that I was in the middle of two players, the two last players. Somebody was above me, someone was below me, and that's a really awkward spot to be in. So I had the choice to either keep playing my lair and probably get focused by both of them, or make a move on one of them. If I make a move on one of them though, the other one's gonna pressure as soon as we start fighting, so it's an awkward spot to be. Most important thing is not to panic. I clutched this up really nicely, check it out. Yes sir, popped off that game. That sent me up to around 100th place on the leaderboard, and this next game got me all the way up to 17th place, with 3 more games remaining. Let's take a look at this game, specifically my rotations, and see how I popped off here. As you can see, I have 2 0-point fish, which are so OP, especially for these earlier zones before the moving zones. I mean, during the moving zones, they're OP too, but it gets a little congested, so sometimes you can get trapped behind builds if you use the 0 points too late. So as you can see here, I got all the way towards zone, but I boxed up slightly outside of zone, so I had to waste all these extra mats that I really didn't need to waste. I just wasn't paying close enough attention to where zone really was. I ended up wasting like 100 to 150 extra mats that I didn't need to waste. It didn't end up hurting me this game, but it could have in a different game. Anyways, as you saw, I used my 0 points again to get to front side of zone, but I got myself in a bit of a congested area, and it ended up forcing me to waste some mats. If I would have taken more time, I could have gotten myself to a better position on front side of zone where I really didn't need to build as much. But it's alright, because I did a really good job getting a refresh, and I noticed right away this refresh gave me bouncers. When you have bouncers, especially in stacked endgames like this, you need to make sure you're in a good position to use those bouncers. So I gained some elevation here and start scouting the area for where I can bouncer. Check out how I position myself with these next 2 bouncers. I get all the way to front side of zone and on dead side where no other players were. In this situation, dead side was the far side of the moving zone, because usually when it's a moving zone, people rotate only as far as they need to go. They get right towards that front edge of the moving zone and then they base up. Instead, I bouncer all the way across and get to the dead side. After that, my spidey senses were tingling and I saw an opportunity to get a refresh. Before I go for the loot, I make sure I'm really safe. Check it out. After that, I just get into zone and I'm waiting for the next circle to pull. I knew there was a guy hiding underneath these builds on the other side. I saw an opportunity to bouncer over to him and get a sneaky shot on him, but I hit my head on these builds and it kind of ruined my play. And then after that, I just got scuffed. After that play didn't work, I should have just focused on getting ahead of zone once again, but instead I kept fighting this guy. It turned out to be Bizek and he did a lot of damage to me. And then once we finished, I wasn't able to get into zone because I waited too long, and it went straight up a hill. Either way, that was a really good game, and it popped me all the way up to 17th place on the leaderboard. And then I had 3 games remaining, and I completely threw them. I died in the early late game in 2 of them and missed out on all the placement points. And then in the last game, I almost clutched up. I literally fought as hard as possible, but just missed it. So next week, I'm going to be trying to W key my first game, win my drop spot every single time, just stay consistent with it, and then not take any mid-game fights except for in my W key game. I'm going to be focusing entirely on endgame and focusing on rotating as smart as possible. I think if I do that next week, I'm going to be able to make some money. Just want to remind you again, if you guys want to see the entire gameplay, every fight, every rotation, that is on my second YouTube called More JivanTV. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a great day. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're new. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.